Okay, we're on. Hey everyone, my name is Tyler Schwab, and I am super honored to be capturing these stories of the story of the Bigler family. What they do, what makes them tick, who they are, what they enjoy. And tonight I have the privilege of welcoming Raul on this podcast, on this show, on this video. I think John mainly is going to use it for like YouTube and stuff, so I won't call it a podcast, but I guess to start out, like Raul, like I'm just gonna like get right into it. Like you are different than the rest of the Bigler siblings. Do you want to kind of go into like what makes you different than like the rest of the Bigler siblings?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously for me, I've been in some ways adopted to the family. I have my own mom, but Mimi has always been that second mom, has always been that mother figure. And ever since John and I first became friends in junior high. So really that's kind of where the story began, is in junior high. Is John and I, we played basketball, and I was asked to be the basketball manager and just hang around the team. And I knew back then John and his mom and all the Biglers were always, shuttling kids around and stuff. And there was just one point in time that I needed a ride, and John was like, well, we're not leaving right now. We're going to the church. And then after meeting, his mom there, she would be able to give me a ride wherever, at that time. And so that's kind of where it all began. John and I just became friends. And so I've seen, all the guys grow up. I've been around all their major milestones in life, and even the sad parts, so the highs and lows of life. So in that way, it's kind of set me apart, not only to just be that brother from another mother, but also to be best friends with each of the guys, so I have a strong connection with each of them. And so, they're just like my brothers. So I have three other brothers. I have an older brother that lives in Georgia and two other younger brothers. And those are, those guys are dear to my heart. But these guys, I grew up in California. Obviously, for me, I wasn't raised there in California. I came to California, I was about 4, going on 5. So my mom just there for about a year until she raised some money for us to be able to cross the border. And so we did. At that time, it was just easier, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Now it's just crazier and more expensive to cross the border. So it's kind of intertangled in a lot of things that happened in my life to be able to be part of the Biglers and cross paths. So it's been a good number of years.
Yeah, they are. They're a good crew. When they first took me to their home in Ojai, because I've never been to Ojai before, and just a magical, beautiful place. And
Yes.
although like the traffic can really suck because it's like one-way streets everywhere, and I'm like, y'all got to put like a couple of, I don't know, make it a 4-way or something. But I get why I wouldn't. But so you mentioned like you're not from California, you're from Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So like your family, like what made you guys, your mom specifically, make the decision to leave Mexico and find something else in California? Like what kind of went into like the mindset there of finding a new home in a new place?
So my mom, so I was born in Mexico City in Hidalgo, but my mom is really 4 hours away east of Mexico City. So she grew up in Veracruz, in a town called Papantla. And then within that town, there's a farming community called El Cedro. So, so my mom, when she was really young, she had a hard upbringing. She lost her mom when she was pretty young. I think she was around 10 or so. So really, really young, she lost her mom. And my grandpa was a pretty big alcoholic, even when she was young. And so she came from a large family of around 7, I think. So, and she really, in essence, followed my aunt who moved to the city. And then she went to the city. And then my uncle Victor, also went that way. He left El Cedro when he was around, 15. And my mom was probably around 18 or so. And so she left and decided to go to the city because that's more of an opportunity. My mom was always pretty defiant. She had her own stubbornness. She didn't want to be living on a farm, because my grandpa had a lot of land in that area, and so he was a really good businessman when he was sober. So, but he lost a lot of that land by bad business deals, people taking advantage of him drinking a lot. And so my mom didn't wanted to go to school, wanted to be educated, wanted to not have to just take care of the guys and feed the guys, cook, because she was asked to do that at a young age, to have food ready for these guys. And so that were employed by my grandpa. And so, and I felt my mom always felt that that life wasn't for her. And the same thing with my uncle and my aunt. So those three are the main ones that started moving to the city. And then my aunt made the trip to California, and then uncle went from Mexico City up to Tijuana. And then somewhere in between there, my mom decided to go up to California. Obviously, we were born in Mexico City, my older brother and I, and we stayed there for a little while, and she left us there. Really, her decision was based more on the opportunity of wanting to have more for us, as kids, and just wanting to, because my aunt went up there and she loved Ventura, Oxnard area, just that whole area out there, just is more opportunity. And so all those two, my aunt and uncle and my mom, just took advantage of that. And so that's what they wanted to do. That's what they felt in their hearts was the right thing to do. And so for us as kids, we didn't really have a choice. We're just like, we're like going from one place to another. And so I remember, there, we were left with my tío Tomas, and he lived close to Mexico City. And at that time, there wasn't much surrounding Mexico City. You could see the city from where my uncle was at, and all of that was just dirt roads. Now it's all been built up around everywhere around the city. But I remember as a kid being able to see this dirt road that led all the way to Mexico City. And so those are some of the early memories that I have of just living in a cul-de-sac, jumping on VW bugs around the cul-de-sac when they went around them. So jumping on the back. So, I mean, so those were all young memories that I had of crossing, and some of the stories that my mom would share of the hardships that she had. She didn't want to be in that machismo, as they would say, in Mexico.
Yeah.
Just men who are just chauvinist and all that stuff, and alcoholics to some extent. And, just those are not that everyone does that, but, sometimes in a farming community, that's what you do. You work hard and then you drink hard as well sometimes. So,
Yeah. It's interesting, like, a couple of things that you said. Like, I know that all, like, obviously Mexicans aren't like that, but you also, like, can't ignore the stats where it's like Mexico is on this side of the world, the most dangerous place to be a woman, like, and it's not even close. It's like Mexico and then Haiti, that's a failed state, and Mexico that has some kind of stability is still more dangerous to be a female. Like, so I just don't blame her at all. Like, I don't blame her at all for going and migrating to I really believe, like, in my heart of hearts, that, like, immigration is a human right. Like, people should be able to immigrate where they want to go to. I don't think any of, like, these borders, like, just my personal opinion, should kind of define, like, where you're born and where you want to stay. And especially, like, if you like someone like California specifically, like, just so beautiful and all this
right,
nature and all this opportunity, like, you just can't blame anybody for wanting to go pursue a better life. And as a kid, like in my foundation, we work with kids that are migrants, and like the older ones kind of are like realize, like, yeah, we have a better life here. I have my own bed. I can go to school. The climate's a little nicer. But the little ones just don't get it. They're like, yeah, my mom took me to this place and then this place, and I miss my friends in this place. And it's just like the concept of, like, why they did it, like, just doesn't quite register. So, like, I
right,
applaud your mom. I think it's amazing. I think moving to a different country for a better opportunity for your kids is one of the bravest things people can do. And so I just applaud your mom, and I applaud you for just what you've done. I think it's amazing. And John, when he was talking about your story specifically, talked about just that journey and how you did it the right way and how all these different things. But John, when he was talking to me about your story specifically, he mentioned that he found his faith through you. And I'm just curious of, like, the story behind that, why John would say that. Because John obviously is a man of faith, but he doesn't bring up faith a whole lot with me, and he did with this specific conversation. So I'd love to know, like, faith in your life. Like, is there something to do with that? What's the story? Why would John say that he found his faith through you?
Probably have to attribute that to my mom. She's a devout Catholic, and even through the hardest of times, she has always seen God as a way of peace, as a way to find yourself, as a way to not feel so confused, as a way to gain strength, whether you pray or whether you just believe or whether you just act, not knowing everything, because obviously we don't know everything, there's a lot of things that we just rely on blindly. And sometimes I think with John, some of it, he was trying to find himself as a kid. Obviously he comes from a family that has a spiritual foundation, but spirituality doesn't always mean the same thing for everyone, and so we find our path on whatever road, life takes us. And so for me, my mom was always welcoming. My mom was always open. My mom presented no judgment. She was pretty harsh, as far as trying to work hard, do the right thing. But outside of that, she gave us a lot of freedom. And so I think when John came over, he found a little bit of freedom to be himself. He didn't, just don't get in trouble. If you get in trouble, I'm not bailing you out. So she was always pretty adamant about those things, letting us be responsible. And I think for John, he was able to find a level of responsibility in himself. He was able to find that whenever we would hang out, because I didn't grow up. I mean, I went to church and everything, but that doesn't mean I knew the scriptures. That didn't mean I knew everything about God. I just focused more on the social aspect of being good and treating others with respect. And I feel with my mom and also my aunt and my family, they're always open, welcoming arms to anyone. If we have food, our food is your food. If we have a place to stay, our place is your place. And so I've seen John over the years kind of develop that same personality in some ways. He's like, whatever, let's do this, and so he'll share whatever he has. And so I think to me, that seems to be kind of some of the things that we helped him out with in some ways, and so he could always come over for dinner. My mom would always be there, for the most part, unless she was working. And so even then, we worked hard early as kids, because she needed us to grow up a little bit faster than we needed to, just because she was raising, my older brother and then my two younger brothers kind of on and off. With the younger brothers, there's a different dad. And so he was kind of in and out, inconsistent in the picture. And so even with all that turmoil and stuff, I still think my mom worked hard to create a level of peace through her spirituality and her connection to God and to whatever other being she wanted to connect to.
Dang, that's cool, man. So all this happened in Ojai, California, right? Like all this, like where we've got this story.
Yeah.
Like how long did you stay there? Did you study? Did you go to college there? Like how? I guess what's your story? What's your journey like after you left Ojai, if you ever did? Maybe we're doing this, I don't even know. I think we're doing this interview. I think you're in Utah because of your 801 number.
Yeah.
But maybe you just kept it and you're still in Ojai. Like, I don't know. So like what's your journey after leaving Ojai? Where did you end up? What did you study? Like, what do you do now? Like, what's your family like? Like, tell me a little bit about what makes you you in the year 2025.
So really my journey there is probably from, elementary up to high school. I stayed in Ohio area. And then between probably when I was 12 to teen, I was exploring the same church that John belonged to. It took me about 5 years really to kind of vest my mind into something so new, because being Catholic, I'm like, that's all I knew, and it's weird for someone so young to all of a sudden start looking for another religion or start looking for something new. But that's what spoke to me at the time. And eventually John was the one who baptized me into the church. And so it was a long time. I went through a lot of missionaries. I went through a lot of people, and I don't know why. I don't know why it took so long. I guess I was just a kid, but at the same time, those presented opportunities for me to go on a church mission. People were like, well, you should go on a church mission. I'm like, sure, I can do that. And so it was some level of naiveness too. I'm like, I don't have to work for 2 years. But it was quite contrary to that. Obviously I had to proselyte and share the gospel message and things like that. But that taught me a lot of different things that I didn't have growing up. And also when I came back to California because when I graduated high school, my mom decided to leave with my younger brothers. She moved to Georgia. So she decided to go to Athens because my younger brothers, their dad had an uncle out there. And so, or a brother, I should say. So my younger brother's uncle was out in Athens. And so I'm like, I'm not going to Athens. I'm not going to Georgia. That was never in my mindset to follow my mom that direction. I've always felt that the Mountain West region, West Coast was always the place for me. And so I've
Best.
stayed around here. So I've stayed around this area. So I went up to Colorado on a church mission, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints mission. And so I was there for 2 years, came back to California. I actually lived with the Biglers, with Bert and Chris, with Mimi and, Dad Bigler, because he was a dad figure to me. He'd always watched out for me, and that was probably one of the critical things in my life, is he was always kind of counseling, asking, what are you doing next? Letting me decide some of these things. And there was also a lot of other people in Ojai that just kind of took me under their wings because, in high school, my mom always emphasized academics. But at the same time, she didn't really ever go to school, so she really didn't show me the way of how to. She just said, do it. And so I had to figure out how to on the way. And so I ended up, after coming back from Colorado, I went up to Idaho. So I left in December and then went up in January to school up in Idaho. And then from Idaho, I ended up in Utah, and that's where John was at the time, working at a youth detention center. And so I just came for a visit, and they offered me a job, and I only had 2 classes left for my associates. And so I stayed there. And so I've been here since around 2000 while John has taken off. So he took off and I stayed here, got married, have 2 kids, went to University of Utah, finished a master's also. And yep. And so went up. And so school and education and everything that I've done has been here in Utah, but still, John and I have kept together in touch. I go to California often. I take my kids out there, so we've kept this friendship, relationship. Clark and Jared, which are 2 of the younger brothers, are here in the state. I still, whenever we get together with all the guys if we can. So like I said, we get together on those big occasions and sometimes those sad occasions, but we always stay connected. Yeah.
How'd you meet your wife?
Actually, I met her through a good friend. So on a mission, I had a friend from Hawaii, and that friend had a roommate that was Nikki's, roommate. And so that's how I met her. So just through acquaintances here in the area. Yeah.
2 kids. You said you have 2 kids?
2 kids, yes.
Okay. And how old are they? What do they do for fun? Are they well behaved? Tell me about that.
So Nikki and I have always strived to be good parents to them and everything. So everything that we didn't get as kids, we've always strived, because sometimes for me, living in a single parent home wasn't always ideal. There was always a level of chaos, to some extent, if it wasn't within the family, someone close by family-wise. So even though my uncle was a big figure in our lives, he was also a big alcoholic as well. And so those were some of the hardships. So Nikki and I, were married 2004, but then we divorced 3 years ago. So
sorry to hear that.
To answer your question, even though we've been divorced, the 2 kids have been the focal point. So I've always stayed close by, and they're doing really well. They're 15 and 18. They're thriving. We keep them busy with music. This is going through cosmetology school. The youngest is just really artistic. She loves to sing. She loves to be in plays and things like that. And they're good academically. So we've always strived to academics. And for me, it's always been a good thing for me to take that road, that leap forward to go to school and get an education. And so that in essence has helped me to guide them a lot more than what I was guided through. So, but Yeah, they're young, healthy girls. I mean, they're just like any girls. They're wild sometimes and high energy, and other times they have deep emotions. And so we're always working with them on good communication and just striving to do the best. Be the best human despite mistakes that they may make along the road of life. But yeah, so they're
Cool.
good. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, my parents used to always tell me you can like getting more education is never a bad thing. And so if there's always like a certificate or a chance to have your master's paid for or whatever, it was always like you take it because it will never hurt you in the long run. So that's a cool philosophy you have. And one of the questions I had is like you said that for you it's always been important to like be a good parent. And I'm just curious of like from your point of view, like what are kind of three things, two or three things for you? Like what does it mean to be a good parent? I think that some people might have like different philosophies on parenting as a whole. Like for you specifically, three things that make you a good parent, like what are they and what do you hope to pass on?
So for me, probably one of the biggest things is just being genuine, just being yourself. I've always strived with them to be genuine, kind, respectful human beings. That doesn't mean being stepped on, so when you have to fight back with words or whatever, you fight back, you let people know that you have boundaries. So that's probably one thing. The next thing is really just using your mind, using your intellect, be observant of your emotions, be observant of your surroundings, be observant. Don't focus on the things that you don't have, or focus on the things that you have. And so as a parent, that's what I do. I focus on who I am, not try to be like the best parent in the world, but also I can't be their friend. So focus on that parenting in a smart way. My mom was pretty hard on us as far as being a strict disciplinarian. With my girls, I don't have to be. I can do that occasionally, but I don't need to be yelling at them all the time. I don't need to be demeaning them, belittling them, letting them know that their emotions don't matter, so all those things. And probably the third thing for me is just being consistent, just being present. It doesn't matter what mistake they make, just being there. I know my oldest, she's had kind of an up and down road since the divorce, but I've never strayed from her. I've never let her know that she wasn't welcomed. And even if she's not having a good day, she's always welcome here with me. And so
Mm.
she knows that. She sometimes has a hard relationship with her mom, but some of that doesn't have to do with me. So consistency for me has always been the big thing. So
It's awesome. I,
just
I
loving
know
them.
that there's some parents well, first off, like the showing up, I think like the being present and showing up, I think is for one, it's such a big deal, like because of the world that we live in, where everyone's pulled in so many different directions. We're all so
Right.
distracted anyway. Like being present, I think it's gonna be more and more important for like human connection as the world continues. So I think that's awesome.
Right.
Um, and you said something like, I have this couple friend that lives out in Hooper. They're a great couple, and I'm really good friends with the male, the husband in the relationship, and he's always complaining about their parenting styles because he is more of the parent and his wife is his daughter who's 16's best friend, and it frustrates the hell out of him. He's like, who's always the bad guy? It's me. It's always going to be me. But it's like, I can't be your friend right now. I have to be your parent. Like, we can be friends in your 20s or your 30s or whatever. Like, in your teens, like, you have to have. And so it's interesting, like that. You mentioned that specifically of like that boundary that you're setting and trying to raise your daughter like in that way. And I think it's important because I've seen marriages like not fall apart, but like a lot of tension, I guess, like in the
Yes.
marriage because of that different philosophy. So I think it's awesome, and thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
I know when I was like listening to your story, you started out in Mexico, spent a lot of time in Ojai, grew up in Ojai, but it sounds like you've kind of made Utah your home. Am I correct in saying that? You would consider like Utah your home?
No, I mean, as I tell people, Utah grows on me.
Okay.
So it grows on. And I say that because home is never replaced, home, my roots, I just barely came back from California and that's where I arrived. That's where everything began for me. That's what's familiar to me. Utah is a place where my kids are at. It's a place for me to work. It's a place for me to have my career. But it's never been truly home just because I feel home as a community of people. And to me, the diversity that California presents is so different than the diversity of what Utah presents. The diversity in Utah is really so embedded in such different factors that sometimes some of them are so intangible that they're just so subtle, but they're so disconnecting as well. For example, sometimes people hear family is such a big thing, but if you're not part of a family, then what are you part of?
Yeah.
Sometimes the community doesn't take you in unless you're part of the church. And so sometimes there's separate degrees of separation here, whereas in California, nobody cares to some extent.
Yeah.
And so that's the community that I grew up in. Nobody cares what you do on Sundays. Nobody cares how much you read, whatever you want to read. They just want to know who genuine people are and connect that way. And so that's why I say Utah grows on me. I mean, I think it's a beautiful place. Obviously there's nothing like it, at least around here in the US where I've been. And so there's a uniqueness to it for sure. But for me, there's not another Ojai, if you will. There's not another Ojai Valley, Oakview, those areas, Oxnard, Ventura, those areas that I grew up in, that are familiar to me. So, yeah.
Huh, it's interesting. Yeah, I would agree with that with California. Like California gets a terrible rap sometimes, like people that aren't from California, of like the taxes or Governor Newsom or the
Right.
wildfires or whatever. But like
Yeah.
anyone that has spent time in California and not in California traffic, because California traffic also sucks. And
Yes,
like
it
the
does.
taxes suck and like the price sucks, but
Right.
like people that actually spend time in California, like you have the beach to your left and these mountains to your right. Like that is amazing.
Right.
People go to California truly to like one of my favorite people to listen to about California is actually Governor Newsom because that dude loves the state of California. And he's always like, California is where people come to like make their dreams come true. Like
Right.
the lower half of California, most of the world's culture comes from Southern California. And the northern half of California, most of the world's technology comes from Northern California. If California was its own country, it would be the
Right.
fifth largest like economic country in the world. And I think that's awesome. So I live in Utah too, and like Utah, it does grow on you. Like I will agree with that. It doesn't feel like home. I still tell people I'm from Wyoming.
Yeah.
Like things I love about Utah, like I love just how like intense every season is. Like the fall, beautiful. The winter's amazing. The summer's
Yes.
amazing. The spring's like I love that.
Yes.
People in Utah, I feel like are really passionate about what they do, even if it's like something totally boring. Like I had a guy
Right.
that told me once about some kind of like fancy lock that that he had invented, and he was trying to sell it. He was really excited about it, and it's just a very pro like entrepreneur state, which I really like. And I feel like the values from the church kind of trickles down into the community too, to where people really are kind, loving, generous.
Yes.
And you have like the opposite of that, where like the diversity sometimes is it's kind of hard to find even like almost like on the opposite spectrum where if you're not a member of the church, they don't accept you. And if you are a member of the church, they also don't accept you. Like there's some groups that were like, oh, if you're an active Mormon, like you have no part of this, you have no part of like our community. Like sometimes like as much as I love Utah, I feel like we have some of the worst elected representatives like in the whole nation. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with like, I won't mention any names, like not get in trouble, but there's a representative that lives in Davis County who is very anti-immigrant. And the stuff that he
Yes.
says is just horrific. I'm just like,
Right.
F this dude. Like so like sometimes it can be a loving place, but the divides in people, like it becomes like more tribalistic than California does. Cause California, like people they don't like California may have like its own different things. Like I got asked once on a date in California how many Instagram followers I had, and I told her,
Yeah.
and she was really disappointed. She was like, "Ah, that's it? Like only 1,000? Like, what are you doing, man? Like, what do you?" So it's interesting,
Yes. Yeah.
but yeah, no, I would say it's a great place to raise a kid, though. I would imagine because from what
Yeah.
I've seen, like I don't have any kids of my own, but it just seems like a community that's kind of built around like how to keep your kids involved in something, whether it be church or athletics or
Right.
art or whatever. Like growing up in Wyoming, like the art scene in Utah, the art kids where I grew up could only dream of having like the opportunities that they have in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, Ohio is a place for us to to be creative because it was this a small town, if you will. John and I sometimes and other friends, we had to be super creative, in how we entertained ourselves and what we did, and but it was also sometimes pretty low key. And so we still have the same friends. In some cases, I played football in high school. Those guys that I played football with, those are, I mean, some of them are jerks. Some of them are the best people in some cases, but just because I know them playing football, they're still, those people that I played football with. So I have that connection with them. Yeah. So
Hmm.
very,
So the Bigler family, like, what is your favorite part of the Bigler clan? Like, I have my thoughts. Like, I really like how, like, the Biglers don't forget anything. Like, that's my favorite thing about them is, like, I told John's mom something in passing once,
yeah,
and it was in passing. I didn't remember that I told her this. And the next, like, 3 times that I saw her, she asked me, like, how that specific thing was going. And John does too. Like, John asks, like, all the time.
right.
And it just seems like they're so, like, aware of like other people's stuff they have going on, whether it be big or small or whatever. And so I'm just curious, as like someone who's been kind of adopted in, like John told me just how adopted in you are.
Mhm.
What is your favorite part of, I guess, the Bigler clan as a whole?
For me, it's just the distinct personality of each guy, from all the brothers and even Mimi and Dad Bigler. I mean, each of them were just individuals in their own way, but they just connected in a way and did things that were just part of what their personality was. I don't ever remember a time where Mimi is slowing down, not doing anything, either for the kids, either for Bert, either for the community. So she's always been that selfless machine, if you will, of just giving and doing good. I mean, Bert was always that counseling, that smart, larger than life personality that was human as well. Cause it wasn't that we always saw the spiritual giant that he was. There was moments where John knew how to press his buttons. And those were
Let's say.
from an outsider in some ways being young at that point, those were entertaining because I'm like, oh yeah, he's pretty human. Sometimes the guys would make fun of him, but I just remember the younger ones complaining about chores. I remember, how good at athletics they are, they're competitive. And so there's like a number of factors of just things that come together that make the family who the family is, And so for me, I just fit in, and John and I tease Don. We pick on Jared. We get along with Scott. We love Clark. The baby brother, even though he's the biggest, we still call him a baby. And so we just tease each other and at the same time be competitive, at the same time be supportive. And it goes all the way down from the youngest to Dad Bigler, And so even though there's distinct differences, there's a lot of love and connection there as well.
So what, I guess if you could take one thing that Mama Bigler and Daddy Bigler taught you that you would want to pass down to your own kids, what would that one thing be?
I would say to know that you are loved, that there's a God that loves you. There's a Christ that loves you. There's someone there that's within the universe watching out for you. And whether you're mad at them or whether you're close to them, they're still there for you. So they've always taken that to heart, and that's infiltrated into every single one of the guys, I believe. So even when we're all not doing the best things that we should be doing, there's still almost that hidden voice of like, you can always do better, but it's not a reprimand because we're adults. Even if they're trying to reprimand us, we're going to be like, whatever, in some ways. But yeah, there's an unforeseen power that guides us and helps us and, gets us through life, even the hardest of times.
I think that unconditional love is such a hard concept to grasp too, as like a human being, to where like even today, like I have some of the girls in my foundation that I run, they're just behaving so poorly. And like it really is hard for me to be like, ugh, like it's just taxing because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Like they're not thankful for the help that we give. And like
Right.
I can feel my love waning. Like I can feel it.
Yeah.
And like the fact that you come from a family to where it's like you could be acting like a total dirtbag or I don't want to swear, like Mama Bigler might listen to this, so I don't want to be too colorful, but like just behaving like an idiot, and you're still loved, you're still welcomed, like there's nothing changing there. Like I think it's such a beautiful thing, and like I feel at my home too. Like if I went out and got like a ton of tattoos and got plastered drunk or whatever and showed to my parents' house, I think they would still let me in because of that like unconditional love. So I think that's a great lesson to kind of pin down for that you learn from them and also to give to like the future generations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Matt, I want to ask you a few questions too. For those listening to this, like to get to know you more, like I know we touched on like some things that are personal, like obviously like crossing a border and your kids and like all these different things that can get really personal. I want to touch on some stuff that like kind of makes you you as well.
Hmm.
And so I have a list of questions I'm going to run through, and you can answer them as long or as short as you like.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess first off, movies. What is your top three? Number one, what is your favorite movie of all time, and why is it your favorite movie?
I have so many movies, but I'm trying to think what would be my favorite. I've
And you
always,
can list off a few too if you need to.
yeah,
Like if you have like five or six, like just list them. Like I don't. It's your
yeah.
podcast.
I mean, I've always liked those true to life movies based on a true story. But some of them that come to mind is probably like Forrest Gump. That's always entertaining, just the
Yeah,
one-liners.
classic.
Art, Saving Private Ryan, some of those war movies. Those are always good. I think of The Help, some of
Very
those.
good. Yep.
Those are the talk about women, overcoming different things, but it depends on the mood. I mean, my kids, we love Stranger Things. We love I like more Lord of the Rings. They don't as much, but those are some of the
God, they're
connecting
missing
things.
out, dude.
Yeah.
My gosh,
So
those
those
movies
are
hold up
some of the
so
connect.
well too.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm trying to think of other things so it all depends on what I'm in the mood for, but I love comedy, Nacho Libre, some of those shows like that,
Classic.
Napoleon Dynamite, Dodgeball, some of those ones. Those are just always
If you
classic,
could, if you could dodge a wrench, you
Joe,
could dodge a
Joe
ball.
Dierte, those ones of people that are just like, oh yeah, I've met that guy on the street, type thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so those are
Huh.
some of my favorite movies. Yeah.
I remember when I was watching Dodgeball in theater, I've never laughed so hard as when that guy said, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. I'm like, yeah, no shit. And then he proceeds to chuck a wrench. I'm just like, that is,
Yeah.
like, he's right. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball, but like a
Yeah.
wrench? Like,
Yeah.
why a
Right.
wrench? So, yeah, I love that
Yeah.
show.
It's a good show.
Lord of the Rings, who's your favorite character, like in the trilogy or the prequels? Like, who's your favorite character?
I think for me, I mean, there's obviously the main characters and things, but for me, it's a little bit different. I think Gandalf, I think just his voice, just his story,
Yeah.
just his hardships and, just the torture and things that happen in his life. But yeah, he's willing to help out, but he's also human in some ways because he's torn between two people, and sometimes I think we do that as well, trying to do what's right, but we're held back by whatever our demons are, whatever our experiences in life may be. And so I think Gollum, is just a very, not to mention his voice. His voice is just, and just talking to himself, because even though we say we don't talk to ourselves, we talk to ourselves, we try to, convince what we're doing right or wrong, what's next in life for us, or how are things going today, or how are we feeling? Those are some of the things that stand out to me of that character, just getting through and being in dark spaces, but finding people to help and, and so, but yeah, I like that character. And then I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that really stands out for me. But that one right now just stands out the best for me. It's
Okay.
just,
And
Gollum.
Stranger Things, you like Stranger Things too. Okay. I just watched a YouTube video today about like detachment disorder based on the character of Max.
Yeah,
And I love Max, man. I just think she's great. Like I love all the
she is.
characters, but I just think it's such a great story, and I'm really sad to see it come to an end. Like it needs to end 'cause it's been 10 years,
Right,
and
right.
but yeah, I think that the new episodes come out on Christmas, and so that'll be exciting. Okay,
Cool.
that was a good answer. Okay, so what kind of music do you like? What's your favorite band? What are you listening to right now? What are your go-tos? Like, what is kind of your taste in music that you hope to pass on to like the next generation?
So I have a good variety. I mean, I go from obviously my high school days with Metallica, some of those heavy metal bands, alternative. My brother David would listen to Pearl Jam. So that always has, a place in my heart whenever a song from Pearl Jam comes
Yeah.
on. I like Creedence Clearwater. I like some of the classics, some of that stuff. I even, there was a period in time I got into a little bit of country, which is not my style. Going up to school in Idaho, not having a whole lot to do up there. Sometimes I'd go country dancing with some of my roommates, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what am I doing here? This isn't my spot. But
Yeah.
I would get into that. Led Zeppelin has always been
Mm-hmm.
pretty, some of that stuff. But also I stick to some of my roots, mariachi music, ranchera, salsa, cumbia, any of the Latin style music, whether it's upbeat or whether it's the old classics like Vicente Fernandez. I remember a lot of times that it was, as a kid, I'm like, what are these people listening to? Because they're starting to cry, they're starting to drink a lot and then they're starting to cry.
Yeah.
So a lot of like, really sometimes folklore music that would come from Mexico, people crossing the borders, there's a lot of music about that.
Yeah.
Tigres del Norte are some of the more of the famous bands that talk about, coming to the US and living in a gold cage, but nonetheless, you're living in a gold cage, type
Yeah.
thing. And so yeah, I mean, I've even gotten into opera recently, there's a song called A Flower Duet by Lamke, which is a story kind of like more of a Shakespeare love story type thing. So it's a variety. I'm always wanting to learn more, about music and things. And so,
Mm.
yeah, everything I kind of listen to.
Okay. Favorite book?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of what my favorite book is. I would say there was one time, and this is just kind of what's stuck in my mind right now because of my trip recently to California. I've never been to the Getty Museum. J. Paul Getty was a very interesting person who started the whole oil boom through the Shell Corporation. So learning about his life, about how he started the geological aspect of looking for oil in different places throughout the world. And so that's kind of in my mind right now, one of the books that kind of sticks out in my mind. But I like anything from Marcus Aurelius to Abraham Lincoln, any type of autobiography.
Hmm.
I dig reading some of that stuff. I think Abraham Lincoln's probably the most, for me, well-rounded, really in some ways, just strong leader in our country that we've had historically. And
No
so
doubt.
I always enjoy reading something about him.
My next question is actually, I imagine I already know your answer too, unless you surprise me, but it's if you could go back in history or currently to any person that has either lived or is living and have a conversation with them, no time limits, over dinner or whatever, who would that person be?
Um, I think aside from, religiously, Jesus Christ, I would say Abraham Lincoln, just because that was a pivotal time in American history where, basically we were imploding from the North versus the South, and that was probably, I don't know any other president that had that much stress and that much hostility happening, trying to appease two sides, and really in a revolution in some way. People were just wanting and backstabbing and all kinds of things that were going on during that time. So yeah, I would
Yeah,
be curious to see what his mindset was. Maybe he was just one of those people that didn't even know everything that was going on. And
no
so,
social media back then.
yeah,
I was like, can you believe this guy tweeted this?
yeah,
God, thank God there was no social media back then. No,
yeah,
I wonder that too. Like, I think that's an amazing. That's what I thought you were gonna say. But like, decision of like to free all these people, knowing it will implode your country, like that is, like, that's and they killed him for it.
yeah,
Like in the end, like he paid for that in blood, and
right,
so yeah, I
right.
think that's an awesome example. Okay, so let's put an example. You are having your last meal. You know you're gonna die in the next 24 hours, and you get to have a meal of everything that you enjoy in this life. What is included in that meal?
So I would have, let's see. New York style cheesecake. So my mom would always get that for me on my birthday. So that'd be the dessert. And really symbolically for me, it would just be In and Out, you know. In and
Nice.
Out is because that's where home
That's
is, you know.
awesome.
That's where
Yep.
California, that's, you know, that's where we would, even till now, you know, it's nice having it here in Utah, but I don't go all the time just because it's still something I want to have as a treat, not something that's just continuously there. But for me, In and Out's always been a symbolic place. It's close to the beach. It's close, you know, to home. And it was fun times, you know, John and I don't even know how many times we've been there. And so, you know, growing up and after dances or whatever, you know, we would go out and just hang out there sometimes. And so, yeah, that would be a
Great
good,
answer.
good meal.
Okay. What is your favorite vacation spot?
Favorite? I would say the times we were able to spend together with the guys when we went out to Peru and Guatemala. Machu
Mm,
Picchu was and Semuc Champe. Those were really just two cool places that we were all able to hang out and just enjoy it. I mean, there's nothing like it here in the US, you know. And so obviously with Machu Picchu, it's one of the seven wonders of the world, but you kind of know why. So once
yeah.
you make it up to the top there, and our adventure was just a number of things, you know, so the vacation became a thing of an entirety, not just one. But the culmination would be probably Machu Picchu, and that was a cool place. That'd be a cool place to be at night to see what that's like at night. So, yeah,
Okay. Okay. You're still a man of faith, correct?
yes.
Okay. What is your favorite verse of scripture? Bible, Book of Mormon, DNC, whatever. Do you have a verse you go back to? Do you have a Bible story, or Book of Mormon story, or church history story you go back to? What is kind of like your, if you could pick one, if I know it's hard like to pick one, but you can pick two if you want. But if you have one that you like, let me hear it.
So I have several. I mean, I guess as a missionary for me, it would be Doctrine and Covenants, section 4. That is the missionary section. But putting it down into one phrase, one sentence, something that came out of the book of Jacob. It's, "Oh, be wise, what can I say more?" And so that in itself encompasses a lot. And wisdom encompasses intellectual, wisdom encompasses emotional, which wisdom encompasses situational awareness. So there's a lot of things that stem from that.
There's a saying out here in Wyoming that I've been told for my whole life. It's like, Tyler, life is hard. It's harder when you're stupid. It's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, man. Well, my last question is, who is your hero, and why is that person your hero? It can be someone made up, it can be a real person, it can be whoever, but I want to know who that person is and why that person's your hero.
So I would say for me, it goes back to being a kid. It goes back to just what my mom always taught me is, you know, is to me, I feel like God and Jesus Christ are one and the same in some attributes and personality. So I would say, even though I've never met these individuals, they've created paths, they've created roads, they've created things that I've never been able to do on my own. And sometimes they're unexplained, you know? And so even though life is hard, you know, and sometimes we make it hard on ourselves, there's always a path, a road, influence, an opportunity that comes our way to make life better. And so I've always believed in that. And that really comes from my mom, you know, having faith in. And so probably the second one that's really up there, and I say this just because of the way my mom passed away. She passed away from ALS. And so whenever someone has to go through those hard roads like that, you get to see what kind of personality, what kind of perseverance, what kind of human that person is. And so even within the last months of my mom, she was still with her faith. She was still with, you know, her opportunity, optimism, everything. She was still with all that. She wasn't cursing God. She wasn't saying, why did he do this to me? As a matter of fact, she always would stress in those last moments, we never leave. God never leaves us. We leave him. And so those are probably the two big things, big hero to me in the sense of her perseverance and her resilience and really strength to carry, you know, through life. She didn't have the best education. I think it went up to fourth grade. But if you asked her anything about life, the most complex answer, she would dwindle it down to one sentence, you know? And so she made all the complexities of life simple to manage. You know, have you thought about this? And so that's where her education and life experience became so important. So for me, my mom was way up there as far as, you know, a hero, if you will.
Dude, that's awesome, man. I think it's a good place to end, man. I just, your mom sounds like an amazing, amazing woman. Obviously, she raised an amazing son, and I imagine she'd be really proud of just because, like, especially, is like a because I see this with like in my foundation, the kids of immigrants. Like a lot of the times, like I don't know if your like mom ever like learned English, but a lot of the people in our foundation, like the parents, have never learned English, and they kind of rely on the kids, like be their lifelong interpreters. And I asked one of the girls in our foundation once, I was like, well, like what is your hope of, you know, migrating to a different country? Uh, like what's kind of your ultimate goal here? Like I'd like to, because I was looking to put like a plan of like, okay, how do we accomplish A, B, C, D, E, F, G to get you to that plan? And she was like, my hope is that my kids take advantage of the sacrifice that I'm making and live a better life. And that really hit me. I was like, so like you're their thinking was like I'm thinking over like a generation. I'm not thinking of like next year, next 5 years. I'm thinking of like the next generation of I want my kids to be bilingual, be a citizen, have the opportunities that I didn't have and that I sacrificed my homeland to make sure that they have that opportunity. And I just imagine that she'd be so proud. She is so proud seeing that you took advantage of her sacrifice and are just making the most of making them. That's cool, man.
Yeah, it's hard, but it's not, it can happen. But yeah, it's
Sure.